The battle on track has been quite dull this season, but the battle off track is just getting started. Because Red Bull and Mercedes are going in on each other in ways they haven't done before. Surely this is some leftover cruelty from Abu Dhabi 2021, right? I mean, they're just flat out insulting each other now. We already saw Toto Wolff going in on Verstappen and Red Bull, but this time even Lewis Hamilton went on to throw some dirt at Verstappen. As Lewis Hamilton continues to try to downplay Max Verstappen's new record for the most consecutive Formula 1 wins, stating that he hasn't had to battle against strong teammates, suggesting that the records aren't that impressive after all. On the eve of the Italian Grand Prix, Hamilton stirred eyebrows by disparaging Verstappen's colleagues as the Dutchman prepared to battle for a record-breaking 10th win in a row. "In my personal opinion," he said, "all my teammates have been stronger than the teammates Max has had. Jenson Button, Fernando Alonso, George Russell, Valtteri Bottas and Nico Rosberg." Lewis Hamilton doubles back on his allegation that his teammates are stronger. "I've had so many. These guys have all been very, very strong, very consistent, and Max has not raced against anyone like that." Verstappen responded by calling Hamilton a little jealous, then overtook Ferrari's Carlos Sainz on the track at Monza to clinch his 10th win in a row, breaking the Formula 1 record. Hamilton, who's only ever won 5 consecutive times, replied by claiming he doesn't care about records. "I mean, I don't care about statistics in general," he said. "Good for him." He maintained his belief that he had stronger teammates, which meant that the wins were more evenly distributed. "Yeah, I had strong teammates," he said. "Valtteri Bottas was quick a lot of times." Nico Rosberg interrupted Hamilton's 5-race victory streak in 2014, winning the Brazilian Grand Prix while COVID halted his second 5-race streak in 2020. Little did Hamilton and Mercedes know that in 2021, Verstappen and Red Bull would take the World Championship away from Hamilton at the season finale in Abu Dhabi. Verstappen has won 27 of the 36 Grand Prix in the 2 years since Abu Dhabi, and he has only failed to win 4 times in his past 25 starts. Since 2021, Hamilton has not won a race. His disregard of Verstappen's record is consistent with that of Toto Wolff, who stated that those numbers are for Wikipedia and nobody reads that anyway. He went on to tell the media at Monza, "For me, these kinds of records are completely irrelevant. They were irrelevant in our good days in Mercedes. I don't know how many races we won in a row. I don't even know that there was a count of how many wins in a row. So if you're asking me to comment on the achievement, it is difficult because it never played a role in my own life until I heard about it yesterday. The result itself shows a great driver in a great car who is competing on an extremely high level." To see the Mercedes and Red Bull teams squabbling again gives us major flashbacks to 2021. But Helmut Marko isn't interested in getting involved just now, which is out of character for the Austrian. But maybe a smart idea, as it brings nothing now except for great press. But back in 2021, everything was allowed, it seemed. The Red Bull versus Mercedes duel was in full gear 2 years ago, with Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton colliding at the Italian Grand Prix, marking one of the season's biggest boiling moments. With Red Bull coming out on top and Mercedes falling back from the front when the new ground effect era began in 2022, the acrimonious back and forth between the two teams generally subsided until it recently resurfaced. Thus, while Verstappen is closing in on his 3rd consecutive Drivers' Championship victory, Lewis Hamilton pointed out that he has raced against stronger colleagues than Verstappen has had to battle with. It sparked a media battle over the Italian GP weekend between the two teams, where even Christian Horner chimed in, claiming Wolff's statements demonstrated a fundamental lack of understanding about cars and their development, with Wolff responding a few days later by stating Verstappen's record-breaking run is just good for Wikipedia. Given the history between the two teams, the back and forth is certain to continue, although Red Bull Racing advisor Helmut Marko has stated that his team isn't really interested in what Mercedes has to say because they aren't serious competitors. "That's the difference between Mercedes and us," he said. "We look at our team to get the best performance from our own team, and we don't worry about Mercedes as long as they're not a serious competitor for us. So we just look after our own thing. We do the best we can, and we don't make up all these kinds of stories like they do." With Mercedes downplaying Verstappen's superiority, Marko sought to compensate by complimenting his driver. "For Max Verstappen, this winning streak means a lot," he said. "For me personally, getting the 100th win as a team was even more special than this, but it's fantastic for Max. He was a bit nervous about getting it here as well. I think it was very important for him to break that record. Now he's got it, so I think he's a bit more relaxed for the next races," Marko concluded, as Red Bull close in on Williams for the position of the 4th most successful team in the history of the sport. Williams presently has 114 constructor victories, while Red Bull now has 106. Mercedes has 125 wins, and with their current win rates, Red Bull may be able to break Mercedes' record by the end of 2024. And although this seems far away, it might happen sooner than later, as Lewis Hamilton isn't the driver he used to be. That's because he was only used to driving an overpowered car. At least that's Jackie Stewart's take on it. He feels that Lewis Hamilton will face serious problems in Formula 1 since he's no longer driving a competitive vehicle. This, along with his previous success, has prompted the three-time world champion to believe that the Mercedes driver no longer has the same hunger for the sport. Hamilton recently signed a 2-year contract extension to stay at Mercedes until the end of 2025, with Formula 1's all-time race winner making it plain that he intends to add to his world championship count. While Stewart said clearly that Hamilton is one of the greatest drivers in Formula 1 history, the problem he has with his years of domination is that with Mercedes so far ahead, he frequently only had to battle with the driver on the opposite side of the garage for his title triumphs. And given Mercedes' present lack of competitiveness, he feels Hamilton will not have the same hunger as he did previously. First of all, Lewis is one of the best ever to drive in Formula 1. But the truth is that over the past decade, he's raced with Mercedes for a team that was virtually out of contention, Stewart said. Lewis had only one real competitor during that time, his respective teammate. Except for 2016, he always emerged victorious from the duel. And then he lost to Nico Rosberg. With respect, a good driver, but not the most talented in the world. But Rosberg was hungry, had the absolute will to become world champion. Lewis no longer has that hunger. That's why, and because the car is no longer as strong, he has serious problems. Mercedes has struggled to compete with Red Bull in recent years, therefore Hamilton has made it plain that he expects to fight for a record 8th world championship as soon as next season. But considering that he hasn't won a race since late 2021, Stewart feels he won't be able to add to that total even if he stays in Formula 1. That also depends on Mercedes, Stewart said when asked about his future title prospects. And in a way, Stewart is right. Lewis doesn't seem that hungry this year, and this all has to do with the car. If it isn't good enough to win races anymore, Lewis loses his hunger. That's why he can't wait to drive next year's car. So after a string of painful races for the team, Lewis Hamilton admits he is counting down the days until the introduction of next year's Mercedes Formula 1 chassis. Hamilton's life has been made more difficult recently by 2 poor qualifying sessions, with the 7-time champion starting just 13th in Zandvoort and 8th in Monza. While he has climbed up the order and gained some points on both occasions, his team has not been leading the hunt for pace-setter Red Bull. "Races are pretty straightforward for me," he said. "I just got to do better in qualifying, so it's not such a difficult day. And just living with the car that we have at the moment. Today is the 3rd fastest car, and it's obviously painful for all of us. We wish we were quicker, but we're just counting down the days until February." Hamilton used an offset starting tyre strategy for the 2nd race in a row at Monza, and he was one of only 3 drivers to use the hard compound in his opening stint. He was heard questioning the decision after a very early stop for mediums on lap 27, as he had anticipated to stay out for another 8 circuits. He also expressed his concerns about getting his mediums to the finish line without stopping, stating at one point, "Now we're screwed. I don't know how these tyres are going to last." He eventually controlled the tyres and pushed his way past Fernando Alonso, Oscar Piastri, with whom he made contact and incurred a 5-second penalty, Lando Norris and Alex Albon to finish in the top 6. "I definitely wasn't upset," he remarked when questioned about the radio broadcasts. "I was just supposed to go to lap 35, and the pace didn't feel that great at that point, but they stopped me. The lap I pitted, they said that I was going to target, and then all of a sudden they boxed me. So I was a little bit confused with that, that's all. And then I was definitely concerned that I might not make it to the end. The gap was large between myself and the McLarens. I dropped back behind an Aston, so I didn't at that point realise what my trajectory might be. But I took care of the tyres, closed the gap and had that good battle." What are your thoughts on all the comments thrown at each other? And what about those Stewart comments? Can Lewis Hamilton really only win when the car is too good? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below.